KFI AM 640. You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly. On demand on the iHeartRadio app.
It's Later with Mo Kelly on KFI AM 640, live everywhere on your iHeart app. I'm Mark Ronner, in for Mo. He and Chihuahua have a couple nights off, and I'll be sitting in. Same show, same vibe, same crew, same chair, although I hope it's Scotch guarded. Might as well keep it consistent. I'm usually chiming in from the safety of the news booth, but I could get used to this. I thought for a second I was going to have to run back and forth all night, but somebody will be filling in for me. We're going to have fun tonight. It's Friday night. No need to get too heavy. We're going to do Name That Cult Movie Classic, just like normal. We have a special theme tonight. We've got a special surprise guest at 8 p.m. and a Rana report after that with a rundown on some stuff to watch. And plenty of juvenile, borderline, inappropriate back and forth with the crew. With me tonight is my pal Tiffany Hobbs, who you know from the Viral Load segments and from some time in the host chair herself. There's no one I'd be happier to have with me tonight, especially in case I have a stroke or a bout of incontinence. We got this, right?
We have this, Mark.
Thank you for being here with me, Tiffany.
Thank you for having me.
There is no one I'd rather be with. I'll tell you this. You've probably picked up on this because the clues aren't exactly subtle. I'm a fairly guarded person, and you just charged right through my barriers right when we met. I'm like, no, please do not approach. And you just, you announced right away when we met, sorry, I'm a hugger. And that was kind of it. We can go into detail about my PTSD another time, but I'll just say, I think you should be a therapist.
I've heard that before. And if anything, I would definitely love to practice on you, Mark.
Well, I'm not so sure about that. Maybe we should just leave it right there. In the fancy control room, we have Foosh working the board. Foosh, we got this tonight?
We absolutely do.
You got my back in case I just start crying abruptly, decompensating?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, and we got some stuff for you to play, and I'm relying on your supernatural sense of timing. I need you all to know that I am not ordering food for everyone tonight. Does that change anything for anyone here? Are you going to be...
Shame.
You're going to be stingy with the rim shots now, Foosh? Filling in... Okay. All right. I see what we're in for. Filling in for me in the news booth, Andrew Caravella. I hope you know, Andrew, the news anchor plays it completely straight and sticks strictly to the news like a Vulcan for the entire 3 hours. You can do that, right?
You're not Mo.
Okay. All right. And will you have a trainee in there with you tonight?
Eventually, when their Uber arrives, yes.
I see. I was helping train her, and I noticed a pretty quick learning curve. And I told her, you're going to have my job pretty soon. And I just didn't think it was going to be this soon. So nice to be expendable.
They're trying to tell you something, Mark.
Lots of fun stuff tonight, including that special guest. But before we get to that, big thanks to Robin, our authority figure. Of course, Chris Little. When Robin called me, she asked if I'd be interested in hosting some shows. And I said, I thought you'd never ask. And she said, well, why didn't you ask me? And what I should have said was, because I was too focused on working hard to be the best news anchor I could possibly be for you and Chris Little at KFI. What I actually said was something like, I don't know, without making things too cheesy right off the bat. Thanks to Mo and Tawala, really two great and generous friends anybody'd be lucky to have. Not like your radio, hey, you're great, buddy type of friends, but the kind who act like friends when they don't have to, when nobody's watching or listening. I mean, they're not hearing this, and I wouldn't say it to their faces because that is not our love language. Busting on each other is our love language, and that has actually showed up in some promos. Foosh, can you play the first one? Foosh, are you alive? Will you play the first promo? You've always wanted your face on a Wheaties box, haven't you?
Nope.
Because you've made references to wanting buildings named after you.
It's a big difference.
A Wheaties box is even a step down from that.
Wheaties box is reserved for athletes.
Mo Kelly.
Name on the building, reserved for legends.
Live 7 to 10 p.m. on KFI. And on demand anytime on the iHeartRadio app.
So, of course, I enjoy making fun of Mo's ego. Anybody who has mentioned, even in passing, wanting a building named after them, that's fair game, but that's not all there is. Foosh, you got one more in there. Let's hear that.
my doctor put me on the scale, and I was at 191, and I was considered obese. You're looking at me. Am I obese?
Not at all. Not at all. You look great, by the way.
And by the way, I'm 181 right now. Because I always want to have a reference point as to where I was, but I don't obsess. I usually weigh myself once a month, something like that.
Not getting on the scale, if you have one, takes a lot of discipline.
Oh, it's a lot. Because I know it could ruin my day. Now I don't feel so bad about getting on the scale last week. Feel a little better about myself.
I got to say, I think you're looking a little pear-shaped.
Boy, the FCC is saving you right about now.
So that's our love language. It's what we do. It's how men express affection for other men, apart from putting our hands on each other's thighs. Also, Mo and Tuala, a couple world-class fellow nerds, even if Tuala doesn't like the original Star Trek, and even if Mo is unable to appreciate the beauty and profundity of the old David Carradine Kung Fu series, when you love people, you accept their flaws and you mock them relentlessly, constantly. I say we're off and running. Tiffany, how you feeling?
Mark, I love you, flaws and all.
Well, don't make me cry. My goal is to get through the whole 3 hours without crying. It's Friday night. Let's get this party started. Did I do this right? Oh, yeah, we're even getting the timing all correct. Well, now to the KFI. No, let's tease the next segment first.
Yes.
We're still getting used to this. When we come back, have you been groped in the produce department? Anyone give your melons a non-consensual squeeze? Well, stay tuned.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
On to our next story. Has this person grabbed your honey ham? While shopping at a South Los Angeles location of Ralph's on South Vermont Avenue, apparently a woman was browsing the spice aisle Sunday morning on August 25th when a stranger allegedly grabbed and squeezed her buttocks before quickly walking away. And I didn't realize that this was an issue, but we have some audio from the woman. Let's play that, please.
I felt violated. I couldn't believe this was happening to me.
While shopping at Ralph's at 2600 South Vermont Avenue in Los Angeles, this young woman was browsing the spice aisle on Sunday morning when a stranger suddenly grabbed and squeezed her buttocks before quickly walking away.
I was mad. I was very angry. Angry would be the word to best describe it.
She let Ralph's employees know she had been touched inappropriately. Security told her the man was still in the store. So she waited by the exit to confront him.
It happened so fast that I just remember just straight punching him in the eye. He never said a word. He never said a word to me.
The Groper got into a car with another man and left before police arrived. Turns out this woman wasn't the only victim.
There was an elderly woman that was crying, saying that he had hit her on her chest.
This is the photograph taken of the man as he walked away.
I am very hopeful that someone IDs this victim. The jacket he was wearing is very, very unique. His hairstyle, his glasses.
She also hopes to encourage women to stand up for themselves.
To educate women that we don't have to be silent when we get sexually assaulted, because it happens far more too common than we think, or even far more than it gets reported.
Now, Tiffany, has this ever happened to you in a grocery store? Because I go late at night. I'm a guy, and people stay away from me. I think people fear me.
No, I'm fortunate that this hasn't happened, and I can't say that there's any one reason that I'm exempt from this having happened to me. But I do notice that there are people who might linger a little too long. There are people who might make you uncomfortable. But fortunately, no one has ever touched me. I've had things said to me. I've had verbal assault by definition, I imagine, or at least been made to feel inappropriate. But fortunately, no one has touched me. And the really tricky thing, too, about this is the victim here says that she hopes that this suspect can be ID'd by their jacket. The picture that was released of the suspect is just a photo of his back of this unique jacket. There's no frontal image. There's no real specific description of this person. And it's like, of the time when we have so many cameras, Mark, How can you not get a photo of this guy?
Yeah. Grocery stores are lousy with surveillance. I mean, they can catch you if you put a pack of gum in your pocket, but they can't catch somebody who gropes women. I mean, these are things that most men never have to deal with. However, I've had women in my life, including my mother, who have had all sorts of things like this happen to them. I can only imagine the horror of being violated like that, period, but in a public space particularly. So I would never dream of making light of this kind of thing. But I'll tell you, one thing that it makes me think of is that, good Lord, times have changed. Like when we were kids watching the Animal House movie and Otter's walking around in the store and he sees the dean's hot wife and he holds up a cucumber and waves it suggestively at her. We don't do those things in real life, and times have changed.
Not.
You don't wave produce don't wave an eggplant at people.
Please do not suggest any sort of produce at any woman or any person for that matter.
But it just seems so extreme to me, to the point of being mentally ill, that you would even touch a person you don't know in public. And like I said, most men have never had to deal with that. Or if they do, it's just, guys elbowing each other and stuff. And so women have to run this gauntlet of unwanted attention and behavior and violation that we just never have to deal with.
Yeah. And this is at USC. I've been to this Ralph's grocery store. It's on Vermont and Adams. It's a very densely populated area. Students use this grocery store religiously. It is constantly crowded. And so to know that this sort of act happened during a likely populated time, more than these two people were likely touched or approached. It's just that this woman spoke up about it. So this person hasn't been caught. Where else are they in the city? And then also, why grocery stores? There are so many questions.
Yeah, there really are. The other thing it makes me think of is that all sorts of behavior that was programmed into us by movies and TV and other entertainment, in real life, you can go to prison for it.
Yes.
Like the things in romantic comedies that you would have seen in the 80s, most of that's stalking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like if John Cusack stands outside your front door holding up a boombox, you're going to call the cops on him. It's not going to melt your heart and make you want to get with him.
Is it John Cusack of then or John Cusack now?
Is there that significant a difference?
There's a huge difference.
I'm not prepared to make that choice, but I'll defer to you on this. But all sorts of things that we would see in these old movies. Normal people don't, you don't go to sleep on someone's front porch because you're lovesick for them. You check yourself into a facility, and you especially don't touch somebody without consent, somebody that you don't know, in a grocery store. Now, I've been in grocery stores where I thought, okay, I think I'm kind of getting cruised here by a female or a male. I have no interest in talking to this person because that's not normal to pick up somebody in the grocery store. I'm just,
You should see how far it goes.
Andrew Caravella, ladies and gentlemen.
It'd be an interesting experiment.
Has this happened to you, Andrew?
No, I'm not that lucky.
Thank God we've got him here tonight.
Most people avoid me in the grocery store because I'm the one, like when people take showers and read the ingredients on the back of the shampoo bottle, that's me in the grocery store reading it out loud and then talking to myself on aisle 5 on what I need. I say what's in my mind out loud, so people think I have an imaginary friend next to me, so they just avoid me.
That will act as a deterrent. Tiffany, on the rare occasion that you do get unwanted attention, how do you deal with it?
I'm polite. I've always been polite. I take compliments for what they are. And if something is beyond the pale or is obviously making me uncomfortable, then I'll say so. And I do it with, again, a directness, but a politeness. It's a teaching moment. I'm an educator. Everything is a teaching moment, to my chagrin sometimes. But yeah, I don't let things bother me as much. It's just not enough energy for it.
Do you carry mace?
I'm going to say publicly on the radio, I carry a lot of things. So try it if you like to. Try it if you want.
I feel like more and more in the year of our Lord 2024, we must be prepared for violence in public in a way that we weren't before. And I don't know what the reason for that is.
Especially at the grocery store.
I just
Very
feel like
volatile.
People's ids have been unlocked. And so I go to the grocery store after I get off here at midnight every night, and it's a different Ralph's. And it is just a Fellini-esque cavalcade of characters. And so I think I mentioned to Mo a few nights ago, one time there were a couple hookers in front of me, and Mo was trying to ask me, well, how did you know they were hookers? Well, short of holding a neon sign that said prostitute flashing, it was fairly obvious by the way they were dressed and how they behaved. They were hookers, and they tried to shoplift a bunch of stuff, and so there was a big thing with them.
How do you shoplift as a prostitute? You're wearing minimal clothing, I imagine.
It's the purse.
I don't want to know where they put the stuff. I just wanted to back away from the situation at that point.
Okay.
But also, it's right around 1 o'clock when I'm wrapping up there, and there are people trying to get in, and there's the guard at the door, and it turns into them taunting each other like they're on either side of a fence.
Nothing good after midnight.
But I've never been grabbed. Nobody's ever grabbed me in a grocery store.
Well, the night's still young.
Well, one can hope. And I mean, as you get older, you're wondering, why isn't anybody grabbing me? But I said I wasn't going to make fun of this. When we come back, we're going to get just a hair more serious and heartfelt with a nice letter that we got from a listener after Mo and I had an exchange, and that's coming up.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
Mark Ronner in for Mo. I'm usually in the news booth, but we swapped chairs. Joined by my pal Tiffany Hobbs tonight. Thanks for being here, Tiffany.
Evening.
How are we doing so far? Are we doing okay so far?
We are doing really well. I was looking under the table. I don't see any leakage. It looks like things are going well.
Thank you. That's always a good sign. So Mo and I often talk about the out-of-control homeless problem around LA, and it wasn't much different in Seattle, where I worked before I came here about 6 years ago. And like any matter that has some complications and some nuances, it doesn't so much lend itself to soundbite wisdom or easy solutions. We're not going to solve homelessness in 7 minutes here. But where I always come down, and I believe Mo as well, is that there's more to the issue than I don't want to look at them, get them out of here. We keep reading figures like 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. We know losing a job or having a medical problem or just getting your rent raised can be catastrophic. We also read constantly about how many Americans don't have enough money on hand to deal with something like a $400 emergency expenditure. This can really sink a person in short order. So not only could it be any of us who just have a run of bad luck. I've had some scrapes. I mean, I've been a freelance writer in between full-time media jobs, and there are times when being a freelancer can slow down to the point where it looks an awful lot like being unemployed. But also, I'll tell you, as a journalist, I'm also hardwired to side with the underdog and never, ever punch down. Sure, there's a lot of addicts and people with mental health issues who are homeless, but that's not even close to being the whole problem. So after one of our discussions one night a couple weeks ago, I got this email from a KFI listener, and I'm going to read it to you. I'm not going to read the person's name. Here we go. The email says, I'm not sure if this is a valid email, but here I try. It's been weeks now, and I've wanted to reach out and thank both you and Mo for speaking truth and wisdom on being homeless, which is something I've been experiencing, and my main contributing factor is that companies in California do not want to hire anyone over 40. I'm 57. It's been humiliating and devastating living in my vehicle after I used up all my savings in retirement just to survive, never really realizing or expecting to be so low in this. It literally made me cry because hearing you both speaking on the matter, you get it, and it gives me a voice. All it takes is one bad incident, and without an income, no one can survive. We are not all mentally ill or addicts out here. I am a professional that lost my gripping when COVID hit. I want nothing more than to work, yet it does not come. I keep the faith and trust my Heavenly Father that He knows what He is doing and His timing is perfect. Some days I stumble and lose it because I'm frustrated. Anyway, thanks for reading this, but mostly thank you and Mo for speaking common sense into this for people to hear and understand. Came across like I finally have a voice. No one else getting the funding to help the homeless has a clue. You and Mo do. It means more than you know. What a nice letter. And I'm not going to read the person's name because I want to respect her privacy unless I get permission to talk more about her. And we may next week. The upshot of all this to me, though, Tiffany, is that when we're talking about homelessness and when we see stories about homeless camps getting swept, we've seen a lot of that lately, or RVs banned from streets. I think we can all afford just show a little kindness and some decency and humility, as well as some intelligence, and not just get them out of my sight. Because first and foremost, get them out of my sight isn't the plan.
Right. And we were talking off air, Mark, about this. One of the most sobering realizations, I believe, is that many people, especially Angelenos and people in Southern California, all around the country, really, are a couple of paychecks, maybe 2, maybe 3 away from this sort of abject disaster, from homelessness, from housing insecurity. And when we look at these stories, often there's a disassociation. We look at it as a them versus us problem, when in fact, it is right there at the doorstep of many of us because of inflation, because of how high things are, the cost of living. We live in one of the most expensive places in the world.
Yeah, it makes me think of that old Sam Kinison routine where he first broke on the scene, and it was hilarious, but it was also, I mean, it's not a thing that a real life adult would ever think. He's talking about the starving children in Africa, and he starts screaming, send them luggage. Send them luggage, because why don't you go where the food is?
Right.
But that's kind of gallows humor comedy. In real life, that doesn't work. These are people, and they have to exist somewhere. Stuff we don't like or find inconvenient doesn't just disappear to the cornfield in that Twilight Zone episode where the kid wills people away. I think the episode was called "It's a Good Life" with Bill Mumy.
Mm-hmm. That's a favorite.
You can't just will people away if they're inconvenient. You don't like them. You don't want to look at them. And I keep on coming across signs of how things have changed financially for people, like how our parents or grandparents on one income, they could buy a house, they could take the family on a vacation every year, they could send their kids to college. That does not exist anymore. That is a fantasy that none of us, most of us don't have access to anymore. I mean, do you? I certainly don't.
Oh, God, no. Oh, God, no. And I have more than one income, and that's a necessity. You know, radio is great. Radio is a supplement, but I have to have more than one income to be able to maintain my livelihood. And I'm lucky that I do have that. And I'm only supporting myself, and it's extremely difficult.
Yeah, you're not kidding. I mean, I've got the lousiest career radar of anybody on the planet. I started off in newspapers, which are all well known for being lucrative and stable. Actually, they're going extinct. So when I first started at newspapers, they had like their own cafeterias, and you could have assistants to do things for you.
What is this, Mad Men? What is this?
Yeah, but now they're all pamphlets and working with skeleton crews. I moved from that into comic books, and that's so dire that it doesn't even bear discussing. There's only being a professional and making a living in comic books as a writer. I think there was one stretch of a few months where I was writing 2 separate titles at once, and I was doing okay. But still, it wouldn't have taken much from me to be dumpster diving.
Yeah, and again, I think a misnomer, a common misconception, and you touched on this, is that homelessness is due to some sort of extreme failure on the person's part, on the individual's part. It doesn't take into account things that are out of their control.
Yeah, and so radio I've done most of my life off and on, and I started at KFI after I wrote Law and Order video games for NBC Universal, and abruptly that department was just disappeared. They decided, well, we're not going to be in the mobile game business any longer, and I did other writing. I wrote more comic books and did some more freelance stuff, but all those people, I didn't stay in touch with them. I have no idea where they all landed, because it's hard for people to get a job in normal circumstances. But then when you get to be 40 and 50, God forbid 60, there is a lot of ageism going on in employment. They want people who are young and will go that extra mile and essentially do work that they're not paid for. So you see this language in the ads, like we're looking for a superstar or a real go-getter, and you don't need to have the Enigma machine from World War II to decode what that means, right?
Right. And this directly correlates to the idea of underperformance being a reason for closures when in fact it is in fact that corporate greed. We did have a bit of a discussion about this, and I know there are quite a few businesses that have been suffering from closures because of different reasons. When you really look at the origin of it all, it's to pad the top. It's to pad the top. And the people at the bottom are getting that short end of the stick. And those people then could suffer from these sorts of housing insecurities.
Yeah, so like I said, we're not going to solve homelessness in one segment on the radio, but I really think we could stand to approach it with a little bit more kindness, humility, there but for the grace of God. I mean, we're all a couple steps away from it unless you are fortunate. When I hear people talk about homelessness, one thing that I almost never hear is the acknowledgement fortune plays in people's lives. Oh. All right, we're going to break it off there. When we come back, we're going to talk about nudism, so you're not going to want to go anywhere.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
Well, nudism has been in the news this week, and some fairly serious news to start off with. And then we're going to move on to the subject in general, because this is a little bit grim. 73-year-old Stephanie and Daniel Menard, age 79, were reported missing Sunday by a friend after their unlocked car was discovered near their home in Redlands. A tip led investigators to a neighbor of the Menards at a nudist resort, and the neighbor was arrested after his home was torn down in a SWAT operation. A little grisly here, so trigger warning. Authorities said human remains were found in bags in a concrete bunker Friday under the home. This is awful, and we're not going to linger on this particular case except to note that it's been in the news. Thoughts, of course, with the families of these people. Also in the news earlier in the week, something slightly sillier, I guess. A guy wandering around naked, terrorizing people in neighborhoods. I think it was in Inglewood. I guess I should have looked it up before we went on the air. But he was reportedly, how do I say this? Well, he was masturbating in people's yards. And good for him for finding the focus. I don't think I could be successful doing that. But apart from that, fairly offensive. You don't want that in your yard. So I want to shift from the tragedy, and I just want to talk about the nudism thing in general that we're seeing more of lately, because I don't get it. I've never gotten it. And I'll go you one even further. When I hear about like famous people who we find out are nudists, it completely changes everything I think about them. Robert A. Heinlein, the sci-fi author, was a famous, infamous nudist. That's right. The guy who gave us Starship Troopers and Strangers in a Strange Land. And
I'll say,
well, Time Enough for Love, I guess, lends itself to that. But a nudist. Can you ever not think about that when you hear his name again?
I think most nudists would fit that profile.
If
there was such a thing.
I've got very limited experience with nudism because everything about it terrifies and repels me. One summer when I was in college, a friend of mine drove an ice cream truck in Spokane, Washington. Not a place known for beaches, not a place known for people who really take great care of themselves. But he would come and pick me up this summer when he went to the one nude beach by some river in Spokane. And let me tell you, the people who want to be naked in public are never the people you want to see naked in public. We're all different. None of us is perfect. We don't all have personal trainers and that kind of stuff. But in the name of God, have some consideration for us. I've got hang-ups that maybe a lot of people don't have, but these people who came up to the ice cream truck to order things with all their stuff hanging out in front of God and everyone, I just didn't grasp it. I didn't understand it. I didn't get the satisfaction that they felt from it. So some guy who at the time, if I was in college, I was maybe 20, 21 years old. And what seemed ancient to me at the time, the guy must have been 50. He looked like a leather handbag. He looked like, first of all, if you're going to be a nudist and be outside, use sunscreen. Is that too much to ask?
I think it's a requirement that you do look like a leather handbag.
So the guy, and I'm not saying this just to be crude, the guy comes up and orders a box of big sticks because he wants to just walk around and distribute them to people at the nude beach.
Oh, there you go.
First one of the night. Thank you very much, Foosh. Andrew, you said you had some experience with nude beaches, and I hesitate to ask you because I don't know where this is going to go.
Yeah, I was trying to do a tour of one, but I only got to the front gate. They wouldn't let me in.
What did you make of that? Did you take that as a personal rejection? Did they scope out the goods and then say, sorry, you're not cutting it?
Is it time for the news yet?
No. No, but how did this... see, now everything I say sounds filthy.
I feel like looking from the front gate is problematic in itself. You maybe shouldn't have been doing that. That sounds kind of like gawking.
Well, let's be clear. Was this a velvet rope type of situation where they waved somebody in? It's like, no, not you.
Well, I mean, it was before drones, when I did this. So it's not like I could just, peek over the, get a peep show, over the fence. So I was trying to get a tour of the place.
Why were you trying to do this?
I was curious. I think everyone's curious about things that are considered taboo.
That's it. You were just curious.
Well, it's not like there was a back door. It was the beach.
Careful.
Yes. We were talking about somehow earlier in the week, we got on the topic of people having sex in public. And once, a number of years ago, I was writing something, a science fiction, horror story, action thing that involved an alien virus that was transmitted through people having sex, and it turns them into monsters. Now you know too much. But I had this idea that I wanted to go to the one sex club in Seattle to do research for it, but there was no way I was, getting naked, no way I was going to let anybody touch me, and I certainly was not going to touch my stuff on anybody else's stuff and let them touch me. But I've had friends who have done this, and I just cannot fathom doing this. Of course, you, Tiffany, have had tons of experience.
Don't gesture at me. I don't want any part of this. Really quick, when I was a kid, family was taking a little vacation. Stepfather at the time was a truck driver. So we went to some different places in the PNW, Pacific Northwest, and we happened upon, when I was about 4 years old, a nude beach, and people were running.
Foosh, I know for a fact.
And I don't mean running from each other. I mean, they were running. I saw this.
No, by the way,
they were jogging.
If you're naked, really exercise caution while running. You don't want to run.
They were just frolicking, and I was 4, and I saw this.
Yeah, there's a short list of activities you don't want to do naked. In Seattle, there is an annual solstice parade, and part of the solstice parade is nude bikers. And let me tell you something, even the best looking people on earth don't look great naked when they're hunched over on a bike. It's not a great look.
There's a nude bicycle marathon in New Orleans. They do that during the summer, and you just think there are conditions that are probably not good at all for that sort of thing.
No. And they wear costumes while they're doing this. They wear body paint, and it's not a position that's flattering to the human body in any case, but when you're naked, it's all right out there. So all I'm thinking is, well, I think Wonder Woman could stand to do a few crunches, but I'm not here to body shame anybody. I'm here to body shame everybody because it's disgusting. Now, here's one last question. We're coming up to the break here. What's the deal with volleyball and nudists? Why is it required that they play volleyball?
Look at the time. Wow, look at the time.
Foosh, you are a nude volleyball player if I've ever seen one. What's the answer to this?
I don't think I could answer it better than you probably could.
I've never done it. I'm too inhibited. Even when I was in the best shape of my life, there was no way I was going to do anything like this. But I'll tell you one thing, and I've never talked about this before, so people who know me are listening. This is going to be the first time they're hearing it too. When I was a teenager, I'm not sure how old I was, maybe 14-ish, I went to a science fiction convention in Moscow, Idaho. Young nerd, liked Star Trek, take my allowance money and buy like a book or a Enterprise toy or something like that. Well, I don't know if you know this, but after hours at these sci-fi conventions, it gets pretty racy. A lot of hookups, a lot of back rubs, a lot of
Look at the time.
Oh, no. I'm not done yet.
That's terrifying on its own.
So one of these, I happened to wander into a naked jacuzzi party, and you got to strip down. But at 14, you don't have control over everything. So let's just say I found myself having to hop fully into the water quite a number of times because as a teenager, you know how biology works? I should have just left, but by the time I knew I had to leave, I wasn't going anywhere.
This is where therapy comes into play.
Yeah, thank God you're here tonight. Okay, later on in the show, coming up in hour 2, right after 8 o'clock, we've got a great surprise special guest. After that, we'll have the Rana Report. And in the 9 o'clock hour, we're going to be doing Name That Cult Movie Classic, just like if Mo were here, but with slightly different movies than Mo might have chosen. You're listening to KFI AM 640, live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app.
You've been listening to Later with Mo Kelly. You can always hear us live on KFI AM 640, 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. every Monday through Friday, and anytime on demand on the iHeartRadio app.